Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Healthbiz podcast. I'm David Williams, president of Healthbiz Group, and I am here today with two executives in regenerative medicine for a roundtable in advance of the JP Morgan conference. And of course, this is a virtual discussion, and it looks like it will be as real as anything is going to be at JP Morgan this year, given the format. So welcome to BJ Lehman, CEO of Athersys, and Pete Mariani, CFO of Axogen.
Great to be with you, David.
Very good. So I want to hear a little bit about both of your companies and the pipelines, just so we have a sense of what it is that you're working on and kind of what the context is all about in regenerative medicine. And Pete, maybe you go first.
Sure. Well, with Axogen, Axogen is in the business of nerve repair. Every day, people undergo or incur traumatic injuries or surgical procedures that impact the function of their peripheral nerves. And there's a need for advanced technologies that are both economical and less comorbidities for patients to repair those nerves and allow them to get a return of normal function. And we're the only company in the world that's right now working on a commercially available nerve allograft product that allows us to bridge discontinuities of nerve and allow nerve fibers to regenerate across the gap and returning both a return of sensation and function to patients who have this type of injury.
Great. And how about you, BJ?
Thanks. No, Athersys is a company that's in the regenerative medicine space. We're focused on cell therapy, allogeneic cell therapy. And while we have some focused areas, where our lead program is in stroke, we have a product that has the potential to treat a variety of different disease conditions. We've been active for over a decade now developing the product. We're at a different stage than Pete's company. We're in late stage clinical development, so we're running pivotal studies right now. So we're approaching those key moments where we have data, turn the card over, and move towards commercialization, which we're looking forward to and preparing to do. Lead indication in stroke. We have a program focusing on ARDS, which I think, as you both know, is one of the key issues around COVID right now. These are very sick patients that go on the ventilator, so we have a program, an advanced program there. We're working in trauma. We've done work in cardiovascular disease. We've worked in the bone. We've worked in the neurological area. MS, as an example, is a target indication. Fundamentally, the cell product modulates the immune system, and the immune system, as we all know, is involved in many, many disease conditions. So it's got broad applicability, but we're focused on stroke as the lead indication.
This roundtable, like the one I did last week on CNS, is one where I think the listeners are going to say, well, I hope you're both very successful in what you do, because there's a lot of patients that are going to be helped out if that is the case. Now, regenerative medicine is an area that with tons of promise, and at the same time, not always easy to do the development and the commercialization and to make the the economic model work for it. Now, 2021, which I thought was the year of the year of the pandemic, or one of the years of the pandemic, has also been declared by the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine as a year of firsts and records, and they came out with a report back in the summer on that. From both of your standpoints, where are we in terms of regenerative medicine? Is it like very early? We're right on the cusp. We're well into the kind of commercial era, and any reflection on that alliance or that report if you've seen it.
I'm happy to take a first cut. It's a great question, and I think one of the interesting points is there will be many years of first in the next couple of years. I mean, if you look back at the report, you follow the industry over the past couple of years, there's more investment in the area, there are more clinical trials going, there are more approvals, there are more commercial products, and that will continue over the next half decade to decade. So I think you're going to see a series of firsts over that period of time. It's exciting. The pharmaceutical companies are now very involved. They're making big bets on immuno-oncology plays in particular, focused on the CAR T therapies and other therapies. The allogeneic players, the space in which we're active, are advancing into pivotal studies, moving towards approval. The allograft companies, they've had great success and are commercial already, so they're leading the charge. They're in the vanguard, so we can learn from them as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think we're early stages, and in addition to what BJ was saying, I think the FDA has been working, and we've been working constructively, I think, with the FDA on the biologics license application, and the whole biologics classification is coming along quite well. And I think as more clarity, as investors get more clarity of what that means, as companies continue down the path like we are of converting, in our case, a tissue-based product to a biologic, as we see more success along that rate, I think it's just going to bring more investment and more ideas and more invention to the space.
And what do you see in terms of the specific challenges? And any kind of development of a new therapy is challenging. What are the particular things where you might have a challenge with stem cell therapies and other regenerative medicine? And what do? You mentioned, Pete, a little bit working with the FDA, but how do you actually overcome some of these particular challenges in the space?
Well, I think I'll just stick with what we're doing. When you talk about nerve fiber regeneration or just regenerative medicine in general, I think it's staying very clear and concise with the FDA, making a very good case for your product, bringing data that's very clearly understood, well constructed. I think those things are really important, especially, those are always important when you're bringing new technologies to the field. But I think specifically in this case, because there are a number of players out there who would make some claims about their products that the FDA and I think all of us should be very concerned about, because there isn't a lot of data behind it. And I think there are some, like in our case and others, where there's some very, very well-founded abilities to bring advances to healthcare and medicine that can be proven out and can have significant data behind it. And I think that's where you need to stay and stay anchored in the data as you continue to bring these ideas to the fore.
I would agree 100%. Our general strategy and philosophy has been to develop a product based on foundational science, good data, and doing it in a collaborative way with the regulators, whether it's the FDA, EMA, PMDA in Japan. There are a number of challenges, and I think it varies by the specific subsector in regenerative medicine. I know the challenges in the allograft world are different than what they are for what we're doing with allogeneic cell therapies. For us, of course, demonstrating efficacy in a safe environment is key. But from a regulatory perspective, the regulators really want to understand how the product works. And these cell therapies are not like small molecules or single mechanism proteins or antibodies. They work through multiple modes of action, and that can complicate the regulatory dialogue. It requires, frankly, a great degree of characterization of the product, and we've spent a lot of time doing that. So that's been a big part of the dialogue, understanding that mechanism of action, how that translates into clinical effect. One of the other areas of focus amongst the regulators, and we've seen this as we've gone through the development process, is manufacturing the product. Again, cell therapies are in the early days from a manufacturing perspective. Think about the antibody world in the 1990s when they were just bringing these therapies into the market. They had learned how to manufacture them consistently and at scale, but it was generation 1 or 2, and we're approaching that period with the cell therapies. Again, it varies by class of the therapeutics, but for the allogeneic cell therapies like ours, where we're targeting large markets like stroke, you've got to make a lot of product and you've got to make it consistently. And so that's been a big focus of our company, and it's been a big part of the dialogue with the regulators over the past couple of years, and it's going to increase in terms of its importance as we approach readouts from pivotal studies and the whole application process.
I know that it's not that I know so much about development of regenerative products, but I know just even as a podcaster, I noticed that I had done an interview or two with people that are in the space of developing regenerative medicine products, and they were sort of suppressed on the YouTube where I have my videos and the podcasts. And I looked on the Google policies, and they discourage people from talking about speculative, unproven things, and regenerative medicine is specifically mentioned. And I'm thinking, of course it's unproven. That's why you're doing development and it's being submitted to the FDA. But it's sort of lumped in, I think, Pete, as you were implying, with all sorts of other stuff that's out there that you don't want to be associated with. So it's just one more hurdle. I want to touch on, BJ, you've mentioned a couple of times the allogeneic approach that you're taking as opposed to the allograft side. And the allogeneic therapies are really the ones that are just sort of coming through now. They weren't the first ones. Can you explain why is it that we're sort of seeing this order? Why the allografts first, and then on the allogeneic side, both, why do those come second? And then kind of what's the potential? You're talking about going after these large markets. Can you just draw out those distinctions a little bit? And Pete, if you want to comment as well.
Sure. A couple of things, and Pete can talk much more comprehensively than I can about the allograft, but that sector kind of evolves from the tissue world, and that's been active for decades. And so in a way that's first because it was first with organ donations and using that tissue in an effective way to help patients. On the cell therapy side, starting in the 2000s, around a variety of different stem cell types, there was autologous work. So it was taking cells from a patient, perhaps manipulating them, perhaps just bringing them back in at a different point in time to treat therapy. Then there was beginning to be work around these allogeneic cell therapies like ours. And the whole development process takes years. And in fact, we've been in development for about a decade. The interesting thing is, though, it varies by class. So the CAR Ts right now, these engineered T cell therapies, the first ones on the market are autologous, right? So you're taking a cell from a patient, shipping it off, it's being engineered, and an antigen, so it's targeting a cancer, and these are brought back into the patient. And there are companies now following with allogeneic CAR Ts, and that's going to open up the market, right? It makes it far easier to produce product and address many, many conditions potentially. So I think part of this is about the development of the technologies. I think in our world of cell therapy, typically it started with autologous treatments, and then as folks understood the potential for treating a much larger number of patients, considering whether or not an allogeneic cell therapy, A, is safe, and B, can be produced in a consistent way to have efficacy in a clinical setting.
Yeah, and on the allograft side, BJ's right. Allografts have been around for a while. It's our founder actually started by doing allograft bone tissue, and then found a way, worked for years to figure out a way to take that type of technology and apply it to nerves, and found a way to decellularize nerves in a way that preserve that very delicate endoneurial structure of the nerve tissue and preserve that natural laminin protein so that nerve fibers would be able to easily regenerate across the gap, and that tissue itself vascularizes and becomes the patient's own tissue again. That's what the whole concept of these allografts is all about. And where the FDA, I think, properly got to was, as a lot of us were beginning to say, we could take this tissue and we could add something to it. In our case, you could either create a kit where you have some connectors on either end, or there were, you could potentially put growth factors on a tissue allograft of some sort that might help to speed up or improve the regeneration of the tissue. And the FDA recognized that, if companies are going to get down this road, and we were already down that road, they needed to create a more structured process to evaluate the data and evaluate the claims and approve them in a different format. And that's been this whole decade-plus long journey of creating or taking tissue-based products into the BLA world, which looks a whole lot more like a pharmaceutical type approval process. And we're well down that path. We're going to have a top-line data readout in the second quarter of next year on our Recon study, which is our pivotal study for our BLA application. The FDA has worked with us, very, like I said, very constructively. We're allowed to completely market this product given the years and years of clinical data that we have. That we'll continue to commercially market the product as long as we're continually working through this BLA conversion, which we're doing. And we would expect to file for BLA in 2023 and get to BLA probably a year after that. So the FDA, I think, again, has worked very constructively on this allograft side to create a path, a regulatory pathway that allows these advanced technologies to come onto these allografts and continue to advance ideas for healthcare.
You talk a lot about FDA and working with the FDA, and I assume that the U.S. market is the first target because it's large and also because these therapies are relatively expensive. Is that right? And then what do you see in terms of rest of world, Europe, Asia, other rich markets? Where to think? How is it developing differently, and kind of what would be the commercial pathway from the U.S.?
Well, I'll go first again from the allograft side, which is probably a little easier. It is when you get into Europe, you don't see E-mark tissue. You have to go country by country. So it's a little different regulatory path. You do have to go country by country, and each of those countries has their own tissue regulations, and some of them are beginning to deal with this, BLA type application as well. So it does get a little more complicated OUS. But I think the desire in these OUS markets is to bring this technology in a constructive way, and I think those markets will work through that over time.
Yeah, I think with respect to our product and some of the other immuno-oncology products, I think the typical kind of global pharmaceutical markets are all active. They all are. And the pharmaceutical companies in each of those geographies are becoming active. We've done research in Asia. We've done plenty of research in the United States. We've done research in Europe. We've done clinical work in all three of those geographies. We have a partner in Japan. It's interesting, in certain of the geographies, they are even potentially a little bit more progressive than our regulators are in advancing these therapies. It's not to say the FDA is not working closely with us. They are. CBER in particular in our world has been very helpful in guiding our development. But for example, in Japan, they have more progressive regenerative medicine laws, and it's set up to provide a pathway that can facilitate development and get some of these products into patients earlier than they would otherwise get to patients, presuming they're safe, and there's some evidence of efficacy. And so we're hopeful that some of these therapies, including ours, can reach patients relatively soon in markets like Japan. For us, the U.S. is the key market. As you point out, it's the largest market. It's a large number of patients, largest in terms of revenue potential. And so we are focusing a lot of our capability development around the U.S. market, partnering in Japan, otherwise in Asia, planning to partner in Europe, to really take advantage of capabilities that others have, particularly with respect to commercialization, but owning the research, the technology, the manufacturing piece, which is core to the value proposition, the product.
I think you both made it clear that you need a long time horizon to be able to do the development and commercialization of regenerative medicine products. So I normally ask a question about sort of like what's in the future, but I know in the future it's sort of you got to see this through to the the conclusion, which takes some time. But jump ahead maybe 10 years or whatever your time frame is, sort of beyond the current cycle of development, and what can we expect from regenerative medicine 10 years down the line, for my kids or grandkids or whatever? How might the world look different as a result of the vision that you're putting forward?
Well, look, I just think broadly, 10 years from now, there's going to be more products available in this space. Again, if I answer it from my side of the business, I think the process of getting more allograft tissue available for repairs, I think is going to help patients get more complete repairs, whether it's nerve repair or other tissue-based products. I think you're going to see more advances that makes it easier for patients to get this type of treatment, and certainly more economical across the healthcare systems.
I see immense opportunity. I mean, 10 years, I think, is the right horizon to see real impact in the patient population. So I would expect to see more advanced immuno-oncology products, the allogeneic variety, probably having success with solid cancers, which is it's the holy grail of the space. On the allogeneic cell therapy side, I see the cell therapies addressing large markets, such as strokes and the cardiovascular markets and so forth. I see the advent of gene-modified cell therapies coming into the market. There are some in the development pipeline right now. That would make these therapies even more targeted or more effective, potentially safer, depending on the application. So I would expect to see approvals in several of those kind of plays in the market. There are a whole bunch of other plays we're not talking about here on the gene therapy side, which in some ways are coordinated with cell therapies, in some ways they're not, but those have tremendous potential as well over the next 5 to 10 years, targeting specific genes and proteins, for gene replacement therapy and the like. I think just it opens up tremendous opportunity, particularly for some of these orphan indications or indications that are intractable, with respect to treatments today.
Great.
I'm excited by it. It's great. It's a great landscape and a great opportunity, and I see major impact.
I think it's wonderful to have that big vision and be excited by it, and then do all the blocking and tackling and all the the hard work that it takes to get from here to there. So I want to say thank you, BJ Lehman, CEO of Athersys, and Pete Mariani, CFO of Axogen, for participating with me today on the Healthbiz podcast for our Regenerative Medicine Roundtable in advance of JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. Thank you very much, and best wishes to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Healthbiz podcast with me, David Williams, president of Health Business Group. I conduct in-depth interviews with leaders in healthcare business and policy. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite service. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe on your second and third favorite services as well. There's more good stuff to come, and you won't want to miss an episode. If your organization is seeking strategy consulting services in healthcare, check out our website, healthbusinessgroup.com.